best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry Lutz. And hey, just when you think things couldn't get any more crazy, well, they're getting crazier. Here to talk about it is Wayne Allyn, rootforamerica.com. Wayne, welcome back.
Hey, Kerry, always great to be back on with you.
Hey, so where do we even start? I mean, the chaos that's being sowed, and I think it's directly attributable to America being weak and basically withdrawing from the worldwide stage of affairs, don't you?
Yeah, I don't know where to begin. Do you begin with Israel and Gaza? Do you begin with Syria? Do you begin with the Ukraine? Do you begin with Iran? Do you begin with North Korea? Do you begin with Ebola in Africa, which is now on its way to America? It almost seems an automatic thing. We've just left the borders open. We've allowed 2 Ebola patients, Americans who I feel bad for, wonderful Christian human beings who are fighting for the good of the world that prove how great America is. And do you let them into America? Well, we did. But do you let them in without question? We did. There was never even a question. Nobody had a problem. And we heard the usual lies of government, Kerry. What did government tell us? I watch the evening news each night. There's absolutely no reason to fear anything. There can be no transmission. You're all safe. At the same time, the next news report was the doctor who treated Ebola patients, it just died, and he's an American in Africa. And the next sentence, all the people that treated him are now sick. So explain to me how we have nothing to worry about if every person that treats an Ebola victim with every precaution wearing hazmat suits winds up with Ebola. How can you say there's zero chance it can happen in America? That's ludicrous. They're feeding a pack of lies, the American people. I heard today Fukushima in Japan, 3 years of lying by the government, and they finally admitted today far more nuclear material, far more radiation was emitted than anybody ever realized, and it's still pouring uncontrolled into the ocean. All of these things are proof that government is a liar every time they open their mouths, number one. Government's all over the world, not just Obama. And number 2, anything government touches turns to crap. They ruin everything they touch, and they have no idea how to solve any problem. But they act as if they know the answer to every problem because they're all lawyers. That's why I've always argued, Kerry. Find me a lawyer, and I'll find you someone who's completely wrong but knows how to argue in a way that makes him seem completely right. That's what the definition of a lawyer is. You go to court, you know your client's guilty, and yet you could speak so well the jury finds him innocent. That's Barack Obama. Doesn't anybody get it? Lawyers have ruined the world because they convince you they're here to save you, they're your savior, or they've already saved your job. They love that word saved, when in reality they're completely lying and they're just good BS artists, and they're telling you complete fabrications. They haven't saved anything. That's the problem with government. Lawyers.
Well, being a lawyer, I have to say I'm inclined to agree with you, Wayne.
Well, I was pre-law for 4 years at Columbia University, and my sister was ahead of me, older sister, and she was pre-law and became an attorney, graduated Columbia Law School. I'd say of my 10 best friends in the world, 8 of them are lawyers, so I happen to love them on a personal level. I just don't want them running governments and running countries and running economies. 2 completely different things. When the day comes where I need a good lawyer to prove I'm innocent when I know I'm guilty, that's when you need a good lawyer. But running an economy, no thank you.
Hey, well, all you need to do is look at Obamacare, and you realize that we got way too many lawyers, and you shouldn't have lawyers writing laws, because then you wind up with things like Obamacare and all of these other crazy things that you wind up with a Rubik's Cube that can't be solved. And
let me tell you the funniest story of the week. I think, it's just ironically funny that Democrats have seen polls that show that Obamacare is now incredibly unpopular, even so unpopular, it's even less popular than it was at the very beginning. Okay? And they're actually scratching their heads. I've seen article after article that says that Democrats don't understand why it's so unpopular, and their only guess is, this is the guess of Democratic politicians, that Republicans are just running around saying such bad things about it that's poisoning the well, and that's why people don't like it. That's got to be the funniest thing I've ever heard. Here's what Democrats don't understand. People are experiencing Obamacare now. Nobody's willing to admit that. It was never in effect. It was only a theory until the last year. Now it's actually in effect, and it's the most popular ever. Why? Because so many millions of people have lost their health insurance, and so many millions more have seen dramatic hikes in their policies. And the reason Democrats don't realize all this, Kerry, is because I realized the other day, I thought about this, America is so badly divided. It's so badly divided. Right down the middle, we're like back in the Civil War days. And on one hand are all the Democrats who think Obamacare is great because not one of them pays a health care bill. And on the other hand, completely divided, the other half of America, who either owns their own small business or they're an independent contractor, or they're smart enough to be an employee and still realize their employer is paying for their health insurance and might wind up firing them because the employer came in and told them in a meeting, I used to pay $1,000 a month for your insurance. Now it's $3,000 a month. I may have to either get rid of it, it's going to be on you, or I'm just going to fire 1/3 of you. And so that's the divide in America. Those who have experienced the pain of Obamacare know it's a disaster and they hate it. And Democrats are so dumb that the only people who vote for them that they hear from in their congressional offices are people who never had health insurance that were given it free because they ripped me and you off to get it for free. So Democrats don't hear from you and me, real people, real jobs, and real businesses. They hear from freeloaders only. And freeloaders love it. It hasn't affected their life. If you've never paid a health insurance bill, what do you know? You're now getting it free. You must think it's great. And they think that's some sort of an achievement to be lauded. My God, millions of people who never had health insurance were offered it free, and they took it. Obama, you're amazing. I mean, can you imagine thinking it's amazing to give someone something worth thousands of dollars for free and to think because they took it, you achieved something? I've never heard anything so stupid in my entire life.
It just shows how detached from reality they really are,
Well, is it detached or is it, to some extent it's detached because I said they don't, maybe they don't know people who actually have been badly affected like I have with my own insurance policy. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But on the other hand, it's part detached. And the other part is it's not detached because the only people they ever speak to are their own voters. And most Democratic voters, if not almost all, are happy with Obamacare because they've never paid a bill. So they don't know anything else. If I never paid a bill in my whole life, my employer paid it for me, or I didn't have it because I'm dirt poor and government's now paying for it. You certainly don't feel anything negative at that point. So only a person who pays the bill feels the negative. It's kind of like Christmas morning. Is there a kid in the world who isn't happy on Christmas morning? They're getting gifts and they never paid for them. Of course they're happy. Are the parents feeling a little bit of pain? Yeah, even while they're smiling and feeling great inside because they're making their own children happy, they're adding the bills up in their mind and thinking, wow, I spent too much on Christmas. Only the person who pays the bill feels any kind of pain or worry. The person who gets it for free is always happy. So this is now Christmas morning for freeloaders. Every person in America who's never paid a bill is happy with Obamacare, and every person who's the responsible adult who's paid the bill is nervous and worried and feeling negative about it. And this is the divide of America.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the number of people who've actually gotten insurance who didn't have it prior to passage of Obamacare is very minimal, Wayne.
It is.
It's like a million and a half people. So that means that of the so-called 8 million people who got insurance, which it's actually far less than that because the statistics have been juiced up. Most of them had insurance under private plans, or they were paying for it on their own, or their company was paying for it. And now they're in the position where, they got to pay for it on their own, and it's costing them way, way more. And they are unhappy campers, to say the least.
Well, I think what you just described is probably the fact, Kerry, that many people that Obama's bragging about who got insurance through Obamacare only got it because they were forced out of their original policy because of Obamacare. So he ruined their life, and they had no choice but to go get a new policy in Obamacare, and he's taking credit for that, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, yep. And, but it gives them bragging rights with statistics and all that. And, it's just mind-numbingly.
The only good news is it's not working, okay? Some people are waking up. The average idiot is becoming a little bit smarter and wising up because I've seen the polls, and they're horrible for Obama, and they're horrible for Obamacare. He's now the lowest-rated president since World War II. He's considered the worst president since World War II. His ratings are at all-time lows, and Obamacare ratings, as I said, are lower than when Obamacare was first passed, which was incredibly low. So it's at all-time lows as well. So obviously, with the media 100% on Obama's side and lying to everyone, people are waking up, and they're only doing it because they're actually seeing their bills. That's the only way to describe this. That's the only reason it could be happening, is the media can't lie to you when you actually see your bill or see the results. I promised you I'd tell you what happened to me. So I just lost my health insurance.
Really?
Looks like millions of other small businessmen. I lost it. I got the letter in the mail. Aetna said, as of December 31st, you don't have insurance. Better start looking for a new one. And then it said right in the letter why they cancel me. Because of the mandates of Obamacare, we can't afford to insure you anymore.
Really?
And keep in mind, I have a family of 6, 4 kids, and no one's ever been sick. There isn't a reason in the world. In other words, you can't even rationalize this the way liberals would. They would say, well, maybe you cost them more than you made them, and it's a heartless insurance company that therefore is losing money. They fired you. No, my family's never been sick. Not a single child, knock on wood, pray to God. Thank you for the blessing, Lord. But not a single child or me or my wife has ever had a major illness. So a perfectly healthy family got canceled, and insurance companies saying because of the mandates of government, we can't afford to insure a perfectly healthy family. Does that not say it all? Now let's talk about the money I'm paying. On the day Obama became president, I asked my wife to look it up. We were paying $500 a month for my health insurance. Today, we pay $1,700, and they canceled us because it's not enough to pay for the mandates of Obamacare. So this is what I mean, Kerry. The average person who either is poor and doesn't pay insurance and voted for Obama, or is an employee and they've never paid insurance out of their own pocket in their lives, they have no idea what insurance costs. They didn't know it's $1,700 a month. The average American only makes that much. So, after taxes, the average American makes $50,000 a year. They got 30 left. That's like $2,500 a month, and I'm paying $1,700 in health insurance. So they can't even imagine what I'm paying, and it's not enough to pay for the mandates of Obamacare. So that tells you what's coming down the pike, and it's a disaster for America.
Yeah, you certainly have that right. And what's going to happen with it, Wayne? Well, let's talk about what's going to happen when we return on the Financial Survival Network.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
When your accountant wants tax-free income, this is what he does. Accountants know the law. They also know that any American could legally get paid up to 3 times per month, 100% tax-free. That's 36 tax-free checks each year. It doesn't matter what you make already. This simple strategy could work for anyone. Go to www.irsrevenge2.com to learn how. That's irsrevenge2.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back with Wayne Allyn Root of rootforamerica.com and latest best-selling book, Murder of the Middle Class. So, Wayne, what's going to be the upshot of this? Where are we heading, and what's going to happen?
Well, we're headed for disaster. There's no question. I think we're headed for 3 disasters. We're headed for a debt crisis like Greece. We're headed for a disastrous inflationary environment, and that's where government lies the most. We're in a terrible inflationary environment now, but it's going to get much worse because of all the Fed printing. I keep hearing from liberals, oh my God, conservatives like Wayne Root have said inflation's coming for the entire 6 years of the Obama administration and never came. That's what they say. It never came. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that electricity bills are at all-time highs? Have you seen that grocery bills are at all-time highs? Meat is at all-time highs. Pork is at all-time highs. Have you seen the fact that gas has doubled under the Obama administration? Have you heard what I just said moments ago on Kerry's show about health insurance premiums, which are at all-time highs? As a matter of fact, in liberal communist state of California, 88% increase in health insurance premiums. 88%. Does anyone understand that no one has the money to pay for all this in the middle class? That's why I wrote the book, The Murder of the Middle Class. So there is massive inflation on the ground right now, but the government doesn't claim any inflation because they've taken all those important factors that matter to the average household that eat up 90% of your bills, 90% of your salary, and they've taken it out of the inflation index. So government says no inflation, and people that I respect, economists and experts, believe it's somewhere between 8 and 10%. Ask Peter Schiff as an example. He'll tell you inflation's running between 8 and 10%. So what happens when it starts running between 15 and 20%? Well, that's kind of the end of the American economy, and that's what's happening. I think that's what we're facing is economic collapse, a dollar collapse, massive inflationary environment, and a Greece-like ending to America. No one knows when. I can't say if it's next week, next month, a year from now, or 10 years from now. We may muddle through for another 10 years, but I'll tell you what, it's coming. And the question is when, and we're making it worse and digging the hole deeper every single day.
Well, one thing is for sure, it ain't pretty out there. You know it, I know it. We got this structural unemployment, millions and millions of people who can't get jobs, who've given up. They go on disability. They do whatever they have to just to survive. And, it's there's no signs of improvement regardless what the administration says, right?
Well, how could there be a sign of improvement when I can list you a litany of taxes and regulations Obama's passed? And of course, government spending is another thing the average person doesn't understand. In other words, the more government spends, the more they have to borrow. The more they have to borrow, the less there is. There's a finite amount of money in the world, I'm sorry to say. When government borrows, there's no money left, or far less money left, for the private sector to borrow. So that's why there's no money out there. The money factor, I guess you'd say, is just not in the private sector anymore. There's no way to borrow money. And so small business is dying. We're suffocating. And that's why there's no jobs. Small business always creates jobs. Most of the jobs, the majority of American jobs for the last 50 years has been created by small business. And small business is dying on Main Street. And when you see GDP figures, which are all fraud anyway, when you hear 4% GDP last month after a negative 2.9% first quarter, the worst report, by the way, I think was in 67 years, that negative 2.9. Then you hear a positive 4. Well, first of all, I'll prove to you in the next few minutes that the positive 4 is total fraud. It's a lie.
Yeah.
But number 2, Kerry, is the question, if the 4% is even right, what does it mean? Well, GDP doesn't separate out big business from small business, and it doesn't separate out government spending from private sector spending. So if government prints fake money, which creates more debt for your children and grandchildren for the next 50 years and will kill them in the future, that's the murder of the middle class, is debt. So if government prints money to make the economy look like it's doing well, that shows up in GDP. It's government spending. Government spending goes up 30%. And the private sector spending goes down 20%, it looks like you have a positive 10%. But in reality, it was all fake money that created it. So GDP is even fraud, even if you believe the 4%. Number 2, they increased GDP by making up new numbers. And they went back, I think, 30 years now, certainly like 25, 30 years, and they changed all the GDPs. They restated them all, and they made them almost all higher. So they put in a revision that makes GDP always look higher. So 4%, even if it's true, is only about 3%. And the 3% might be 100% government and big business growing, while the rest of us on Main Street are dying, therefore no jobs are being created. But I will go out on a limb, just as I did in October of 2012, right before the Romney-Obama election. The government said 800,000 new jobs created in October of 2012. And I went out on a limb and tweeted and Facebooked and went in the media, and it was me and Jack Welch who both said loudly and publicly that Obama's committing fraud. There are no 800,000 new jobs. They made that figure up.
Yeah.
This is the Chicago mob, right? And I remember you agreed with me at the time.
Sure.
And we all said fake numbers, and we turned out to be right. There's a whistleblower who now says the numbers were completely made up by employees of the Labor Department who wanted to reelect Barack Obama.
Of course.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you this 4% GDP is a fraud. Mm-hmm. They made this number up. There is no 4% GDP, and I know that Aetna, the company that just dropped my insurance, the head of Aetna, the CEO, was on CNBC the day it was announced, and he said, I can only tell you that the people who get Aetna can't afford our health insurance anymore. I don't think there's a 4% GDP. It doesn't feel right to me. That's what he said. So I'm just telling you, I'm just a small businessman. I'm telling you, it's as fraudulent a number as the $800,000 jobs number. There is no 4% GDP. It never happened.
Yep. And, the whole thing, Wayne, they were saying about the minus 2.9% was, it's because we had a real bad winter. Like that never happened before, right?
Well, I know, and that was a joke because, Canada, of course, is colder than America, much colder, and Canada had a great first quarter. So that's a total lie. But now they look like they're smart, Kerry. That's the thing. They look like they were right because now that it was spring, it went up 4%. No, it didn't, folks. First of all, when you say to me, Wayne, how could they, play with the number? How could it be fraud? Well, I already told you they happen to come up with an historical revision to GDP that adds in spending every quarter for the last 30 years and goes back and revises them all upwards. So right off the bat, they're liars. They made the negative 2.9 become a negative 2.1. That means the revision added 0.8 to every single quarter. They're going back 30 years. That's amazing amount of fraud right there. So they make everything seem better. But number 2, what if GDP is based not on actual sales, actual business revenues, but it's based on inventory?
Right.
52% of the figure was based on inventory. So all that means is after a terrible first quarter, everybody raised their inventory in expectation for the average person out there. Inventory, of course, just means, I sell widgets for a living, so I'll produce, instead of 8,000 widgets, I expect a good quarter, I'll produce 10,000 widgets. Mm-hmm. So that looks like lots of economic activity went on that made GDP go up. But that's an expectation of sales that may never come. And to explain that one for simple terms, look at Simon Schuster, the big book publisher. They printed millions of copies of Hillary Clinton's book, I think 2 million copies, and they didn't sell any of them. So inventory doesn't mean you're going to sell something. So the whole quarter's GDP is BS, folks. It's a lie. It's based on inventory that may never get sold or may have to be sold off at 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, we know how that works. Inventory looks great until you don't sell it. Then you have a fire sale, and it goes, like you said, at 10 cents on the dollar. Or sometimes, like in the case of Hillary's book, you have to give it away.
Give it away in a fire sale.
Or you can't even give it away in that case. Right? And your book, on the other hand, is selling like incredibly, huh?
Well, it's doing well. It's the number. I'm going to get my third week report sometime today after you and I get off the phone. But the first 2 weeks, it was the number 5 best-selling political hardcover in America. And the 4 people ahead of me are all New York Times number 1 bestsellers. Ben Carson and Dinesh D'Souza and Charles Krathheimer and Ed Klein of Blood Feud, the Clintons and the Obamas. 4 of the best-selling books in the history of politics are ahead of me, and that's it. If you wonder where Hillary Clinton is, she would be ahead of me, and I'd be the 6th bestseller if she counted as political, but she's in the category of biography, so she doesn't count in my category according to BookScan. So I'm the 5th best-selling political book in the United States, and I'm hoping to move up soon. So we're doing well, and I think it's because my book isn't the Murder of the Middle Class is the name of the book. Get it at Amazon or Sam's Club or Barnes & Noble or any fine bookstore. Costco has it as well. And the key to my book is the Murder of the Middle Class is not just a tax, it's about solutions. I've got incredible solutions to save the American economy. But at this point, Kerry, I think the number 1 solution I'd recommend is prayer. I think we all better get on our knees and start praying. There's number 1 of a long list of solutions. Start praying, folks, because I believe very strongly in God. I think God made this the greatest nation of world history, and we are in such a bad spot right now that prayer can't hurt. It can only help. I think we might want to rely on a little bit of prayer here because we need a wing and a prayer. We need a 60-yard touchdown bomb in the fourth quarter with less than a minute to go and down by 8 points. And then after we score, we got to get a 2-point conversion, and then we first got to go to overtime. That's how bad things are right now. We're looking at some really bad situation. Let me give you some stats, Kerry, of just the last week, just that I've heard in the last week, that prove the murder of the middle class, by the way. The net assets of the average American household are down by 1/3 since 2003, and they're down by half, or just about half, since 2007. So in other words, the average American household was worth $100,000 in 2007, and today it's worth about $50,000, half of what it was. 36% of Americans are in debt collection. That's 77 million Americans getting calls from debt collectors. 40% of American workers now earn less than the minimum wage in 1968. 20% of U.S. families don't have a single member who's employed under their roof. And since Obama became president, 11 million working-age Americans have left the workforce. So when you hear unemployment, that figure is completely fraudulent. It doesn't count 11 million people that are working age that just stopped working. They don't count. 11 million. So I always like to say Obama is like, I live in Vegas, and who's the most famous magician? David Copperfield. Obama is like better than David Copperfield. He waved his hands, and 11 million working-age Americans just disappeared, never to be seen again. That's about 2 million for every year of Obama's in office. He's in office 5.5 years, and 11 million are gone. So every year Obama's in office, 2 million people disappear from the workforce. That man is one hell of a magician.
Yeah, remarkable. And on that note, Wayne, we got to run. So rootforamerica.com. That's where you find Wayne's blog and I guess your book at bookstores and Amazon. And link is found on our website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. Get the first 5 chapters of my book for free. Wayne, we'll talk with you again real soon. Thanks.
You got it. The murder of the middle class. Let's all pray, and God bless America that we can fight the murder of the middle class. Thank you, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.